I'm Toki Skáldagörvir. Welcome back as we conclude the telling of Beowulf. So far, Hrothgar, king of the Danes, built a great mead hall called Heorot. Every night, an evil monster named Grendel came to the hall and killed and ate Hrothgar's men. Hrothgar was old and unable to protect his people. Beowulf, a warrior of the Geats, sailed to Heorot to defeat Grendel. He battled with the monster, ripped its arm off, and mortally wounded Grendel. That night, the Danes and the Geats celebrated, and Grendel's mother came to the hall to claim her revenge. While the men were sleeping, she killed a beloved thane of King Hrothgar. Now Beowulf has traveled to her lair at a foul and evil lake where he intends to kill her and finish the work that he started when he killed Grendel. Listen.
Beowulf, mother lord, an egg feawas. You think nu, say Mara, maga helv dennis, snotra fengel, nu each see this fus, gold wina gumana, what with yed sprakon, yif each at the arfa, thinner shoulder, aldre linen, that thu me a wara, for the wittenham, on fader stall.
Now am I far faring, famed Heftilson. Hold in your soul what we spoke earlier. Wisdom giver, gold friend of men. If I should perish, part from my life in your great service, you should stand for me, forth departed in a father's place. Hold in protection my hand companions, my young blood thanes. If battle takes me, and the great treasures that you gave to me, send to Helak, Hrothgar, dear friend, the storm Yeats king, son of Hrethel, will see in gold shining jewels that I found a gold giver, great in manhood, and I enjoyed while I could his kingly virtues. Give to Unferth this old heirloom, the sword hard edge, splendid with waves, widely known to man, myself with hunting, will do glory, or death will seize me. After sharing his words, the Waird's lord hastened bravely, for no answer wished he to wait. The wave-welling took the battle prince. It was part of the day before he might see the sea bottom. Then the sword-greedy, grim sea lady, who had held the floods 500 years, soon discovered a certain man sought from above the stranger's home. Terror in her grip, she grasped at him, seized battle prince, but no pain could she give him, no hurt in body. Metal mail guarded him, so she might not rend ring dress of war. Locked limb armor with angry fingers, the sea wolf then bore Beowulf, ring lord, to the sea bottom, to her battle hall. Brave though he was, no weapon of war might he wield there, but many wonders attacked as he swam. Many sea monsters broke his war shirt with battle tusks. Fierce ones pursued him. Then the swordsman saw that he stood inside some strife building, a fine war hall where no water harmed him, nor, because of the hall ceiling, might the sudden flood grip touch or seize him. He saw firelight gleaming in the dark, glowing brightly. The good man then saw the sea cursor, strong mere woman. He struck mightily with hard war sword. He withheld not the stroke, so the ring-marked sword sang on her head greedy war songs. The guest found that war-right, hunting, would not harm her life, nor bite eagerly. The battle edge failed. The folk prince in need, before it endured many hand meetings, helmets sheared off war shirts of the fated. It was the first instance that the loved treasure lost its glory. Helak's kinsman, of courage not slow, mindful of glory, again was resolved. The famous warrior flung forth the sword, the wound-marked battle edge woven with art, steel edge to the earth. In strength he trusted, mighty hand grip. So a man shall do when he thinks to gain glory in battle, long-lasting praise. He will not prize his life. The sword, yea, its lord, seized by the shoulder Grendel's mother. He mourned not the feud, full of war heat. The fire-tempered lord flung the life foe, so she fell on the floor. Promptly, the mother paid back his reward. With death-grim grip, she grasped at him. The foot soldier, strongest of warriors, then fell over, faltered in heart. She beset her wall guest, swung with her sword, wide and blood-edged. She wished to avenge her one baby. The braided battle nest lay on his shoulders, his life preserved. It withstood assault of the sword point and edge. Ecgtheow's son, sword champion, would have started a journey and sought the wide ground. But the bright war shirt, brave battlenet, helped him in need, and holy God wielded victory. The warlord of heaven, sure-sighted Lord, decided it rightly, settled his fate. So he stood again.
He saw among the armor a sword strong-edged, victory-blessed, an old blade of the giants, mind worthy of warriors, of weapons the best, good and adorned, but giants' work, greater in size than any swordsman else might bear easily to battle sport. Grim and battle-fierce, he grasped the linked hilt. The Dane's hero drew the ringed sword. Despairing of life, he struck angrily. So the giant's sword caught on her neck, broke her bone rings. The blade severed fated flesh home. She fell on the floor. The blade, sweat, blood. The swordsman rejoiced. The gleam shone down. Sunlight stood within. The sky's candle shone most clearly, glowed as from heaven. He gazed at the hall. Helak's thane, heart firm and angry, turned to the wall, his weapon raised strongly by the hilt. The sword was not useless to the battle warrior. He wished quickly to pay back Grendel for great war rushes which he once worked against the West Danish, much more often than merely once. When he slew in bed, sleeping, devoured Hrothgar the king's hearth companions, full 15 men of the folk of the Danes, and other such work, war spoils hateful, performed on the folk. The fierce hero settled those scores when he saw Grendel lying in bed, battle-weary, wanting his life, since war in Heorot caused him injury. The corpse burst open, when after death day it endured a blow, cruel battle swing, and he cut off its head.
Soon the wise men above, who gazed with Hrothgar at the turbulent water, saw blood drifting up, a churning foam. The spreading stain was dark, lake-wide. The gray-bearded elders spoke quietly together about the brave Yeat. They did not think to see him return, said he would not come again to seek the king with another victory. It seemed to many that the wolfish woman had torn him to pieces. Then the 9th hour came. The valiant Scyldings gave up the cliff watch. The gold friend departed, went home with his men. The Yeatish visitors still sat, heartsick, stared at the mere. They wished, without hope, they could see their lord, that great friend himself. Below, that sword had begun to melt in battle-bloody icicles. That it melted away was as much a marvel as ice itself, when the Father unwinds the bonds of frost, loosens the freezing chains of water. Who keeps the power of times and seasons? He is the true God. The man of the waiters took nothing more from the dark gift hall, despite heaped treasure, except that head and the hilt, jewel bright. Already the sword had melted away, its blade had burned up, too hot the blood of the poisonous spirit who had died within. And soon he was swimming, who had battle withstood the mortal attacks of 2 evil creatures, rose through the waters. The currents were cleared, the broad expanse, now the alien spirit had finished her days, and this fleeting life. And thus the man came, protector of sailors, strong swimmer to land, rejoiced in the weight of that great water booty he carried with him. They clustered around him, his thanes in their armor, gave thanks to God for return of their prince, that they saw him alive, happy and whole. From the mighty man they took shirt and helmet, quickly unstrapped him. The waters subsided, the lake beneath the clouds still stained with blood. Then they left that place by the narrow path. They marched, glad-hearted, followed the trail, reached familiar ground. Brave as kings, they carried that head away from the cliff. It was hard going for both pairs of men, stout-hearted warriors. 4 men it took to raise on a war spear Grendel's head, laboriously guided back to the gold hall. In marching formation they came to the hall door, the 14 Yeat men, brave battle-ready, and the lord of those men marched right among them, proud with retainers. He came across the fields. That prince of thanes then entered the hall, brave in his deed, honored in fame, a man battle-tested. He greeted Hrothgar. Then Grendel's head was dragged by its hair across the floor to the benches where the warriors drank, to the nobles and queen, terrible before them. All the men stared at that awesome sight.
Then Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, spoke. Now, Lord of Shielding, son of Halfdan, with joy we bring you these lake spoils, the tokens of triumph you see here. I barely escaped with my life from this fight under the flood, a task fraught with danger and nothing easy. If God had not shielded me, all were ended. I could not work the deed with runting, fine weapon though it chanced to be, but the ruler of men, who often helps the defenseless, showed me a sword, an ancient weapon hung on the wall. While I drew it, and so killed the lair dweller. The patterned blade melted there in bloody hot battle surge. The foul deeds avenged as was fitting the deadly Dane slaughter. I grasped the hilt brought from the demon's den. I pledge that you and your warrior host all sleep sound now in Heorot, free from sorrow. No longer need you fear for your thanes, young and old, or dread as you did before, Lord of the Shieldings, that taking of life that wasted your men. Then the gold hilt, a relic of giants' work, was placed in the hands of the aged king. When death removed that wrathful creature, God's murderous enemy and his mother, that hilt, the work of wondrous smiths, passed into the Lord of the Danes' hoard. It came into the power of a king on earth, the best of those between the two seas, who dealt out rich gifts in Danish lands. Hrothgar gazed at the hilt, that relic of ancient times, where was engraved the source of war, when the waves rose and destroyed the race of giants. That tribe, alien to the eternal Lord, suffered terribly. The Almighty dealt their reward in that seethe of waters. There were runes, too, in shining gold, inlaid on the blade, rightly marked, set down and said, for whom the sword, that finest of irons, had first been made, with scroll work and serpentine patterns.
Then Hrothgar spoke. All fell silent. An aged guardian of his homeland, who recalls tradition and acts rightly towards his people, may indeed say that this man was born to greatness. Beowulf, my friend, your fame runs everywhere throughout the nations. You have strength, wisdom at heart, joined to patience. I will stand firm to the friendship we spoke of before. You will be an enduring comfort now to your people, a bulwark for heroes. Now Hermod proved not so to Egwala's children, to the Undershieldings. His rise brought no joy to the Danes, only destruction, only their slaughter. He felled his table companions in fury, his right-hand men, despite his fame. He was exiled from human pleasures. The Almighty God had given him power and exalted him over the others, but his heart grew thirsty for blood. He gave no more rings to the Danes, lived without joy, and suffered pain. The people's bane. Learn from this. Know true virtue. So I say to you, being old, winter wise, Almighty God in wondrous ways, from deep knowledge, grants human beings the gifts of wisdom, land, and lordship. He governs them all. At times, for his pleasure, he allows the mind of some noble man its sway, grants him earthly joy in his homeland, command of the warrior's stronghold. He grants him power in this world over a vast kingdom, so that the man in his unknowing sees no end to it all. He lives well, neither illness nor age trouble him, no sharp sorrow darkens his thought, no conflict nor the bite of malice, but rather the whole world bends to his will. He knows life's best. Until overweening pride enters him, waxes and swells, and the warden sleeps, the soul's guardian, the soundest slumber. Bound in distraction, the slayer is near, loosing a deadly shaft from the bow. Then under the helm into the heart it strikes. He lacks all defense from those strange, perverse demands of the evil one. What he has long ruled seems too little. Cruelly he covets, ceases ring-giving, forgets the future, forgoes the past when God, the ruler of glory, gave a portion of honor into his hands. In the end, it must come to pass that the body, flesh, lent to him, fails. Fated, it falls. Another one shares the treasure without fear or regret. All of the earl's wealth he hoarded. Dear Beowulf, finest of warriors, guard yourself against such error. Choose the better path for yourself, eternal worth. Great champion, give no heed to pride. You'll glory in strength for a while. Soon, sickness or sword will weaken your powers. A flare from the fire, or the flood's surge, or a blade's leap, or a spear's flight, or foul old age. The brightest eye darkens and dims. Warrior, soon comes death oversweeping you. I've ruled the Ringdanes 100 years under these skies, saved them in war from many a race in Middle-earth, ash spear, sword edge, until no enemy was left under heaven. Now there came reverses here, pain after pleasure. For Grendel invaded my home time and time again, and I endured continual sorrows from his raids. Thanks be to fate, the power eternal, that I survived to set eyes on his blade-bloodied head after all the tale of horror. Go, find a bench, and honored by that conflict, join in the feast. We will share treasure at dawn.
The Geat went with joy in his heart to take a seat, as the king said. Then the brave warriors seated there in the hall drank as before, feasted again. Night's helm fell dark over warriors. The men rose, the aged, gray-haired shielding wished for bed, and the Geat, the brave shield man, for sleep. At once, a hall thane assigned to serve the hero's needs, such as a seaborne guest was given of courtesy in those days, led the weary traveler from afar, the great-hearted man, to rest. The hall towered above, gabled, gold glinting. The guests slept until the black raven cawed gleefully at the sun in the sky, heaven's joy. Then the bright warriors came, those noble men, eager to return to their people, fit to fare, and the brave guest longing for his far-off ship. He told Unferth, Edgecliff's son, the hardy warrior, to take back and wear the sword, his dear blade Hrunting, with thanks for the loan, saying he found it a friend in battle, a warlike blade with never a word of blame. He was a man of pride. Then, with his warriors all armed and ready to go, their honored lord approached the high seat of the king, and the brave warrior greeted Hrothgar.
Beowulf spoke, Ecgtheow's son. Now we warriors coming from afar would like to say that we wish to seek our Hrothgar again. We have been entertained most properly, kindly, brought every good thing we could possibly ask. You have dealt with us. If I can ever do anything on earth to gain your love more, lords or warriors, than my fighting thus far, I will do it at once. If I ever hear across the far seas that neighboring peoples threaten you with battle as enemies have moved against you before, I will bring to your side 1,000 thanes, warriors to help you. I know this of Hrothgar, lord of the Geatmen, young though he is, our nation's shepherd, that he would support me in word and deed, that I might continue to show you honor by help of spearwood, aid you with strength when you need men. If, on the other hand, Hrethrych decides a king's son to come to our court, he will find only friends. Distant lands are the better sought by one himself good. Hrothgar replied, made a speech in answer. The all-wise Lord has sent these words into your mind. No man wiser have I ever heard speak, so young in years, great in your strength, mature in thought, and wise in your speeches. If the son of Hraethel should ever be taken in blood-angry battle, sickness, the sword or spear, kill your lord, and you should still live, I would fully expect the Geats could not choose a better king anywhere alive, a Hrothgar for heroes, if it pleased you to rule the land of your people. Your character pleases me better each moment, my dearest Beowulf. You have brought to pass that peace bond. Friendship shall tie our peoples, Geats and Speardanes, in common kinship, and strife shall sleep, malicious attacks where they weathered before. So long as I rule this broad kingdom, we shall give treasures, and many shall greet each other with gifts across the gannet's path. The ringneck boat shall carry overseas gifts of friendship, the strongest tokens. I know our peoples will stand fast knitted toward friend and foe, blameless in everything, as in the old manner. Then still in the hall, the shield guard of nobles, kinsmen to Halfdan, gave him 12 treasures, bade him go with gifts, seek his own dear people, journey safely, and come back quickly. Then the good king, of a noble race, great Scylding prince, held that best thane round the neck and kissed him. His tears ran down, streaked his gray beard. Wise in his age, he expected 2 things, but one the more strongly, that never again would they look in each other as this brave meeting. That man was so dear that he could not withhold these deep tears, fixed in his heart by the bonds of thought, a deep felt longing for the beloved man burned in his blood. Then Beowulf left him. A fighter gold proud, rejoicing in treasure, marched over the turf. Their longship waited, ready for its captain, rode at anchor. As they traveled seawards, the gift of Hrothgar were often praised. He was one king blameless in everything, till age took from him the joy of his strengths, a thing that harms many.
The brave, hardy heaps of warriors came to the water wearing ringnet, locked limb tunics. The land warder saw the fighter's home trip, as he had earlier. The brave, hardy heap of warriors came to the water wearing ringnets, locked limb tunics. The land warder saw the fighter's home trip, as he had earlier. With no grave insult, he greeted the guests from Sea Cliff's nose. But near them he rode and spoke welcome to the wader folk, bright-armed fighters. They fared to the ship. The sea-curved ship sat on the sand. The ring-proud ship stowed with war weeds, with horses and mead gifts. The mast towered over King Hrothgar's hoard of treasure. Beowulf gave to the boat warden a gold-bound sword. That good heirloom made him worthier on mead benches soon afterwards. The ship went forth, driving the deep, Denmark leaving. They fixed a sail, a sea garment, bound it to the mast. The brine wood groaned. Wind over waves in no way hindered wave floaters sailing. The seagoer fared. The foamy-necked ship floated over the waves, the bound-stem ship over sea currents, so that they soon perceived sea cliffs of the Geats, well-known headlands. The wind-driven keel surged forward then. It stood on land. The harbor warden hastily was ready. He looked from afar for the loved warriors, eager on the current, often and earlier. He fastened to the sand the ship wide-bosomed, fast with bond anchors, lest the force of the waves drive hence from them the happy wood. He ordered them to bear ornaments and gold, noblemen's gain. They need not from there go far to seek the giver of treasure, Healach Hrethaling, where at home he dwelled, he and his war thanes, by the wall of the sea. The keep was grand. The king, prince famous, high in the hall. Heach, Harth's child, young in winters, wise and well-minded, though lady of the Geats lived but a few years in city walls. Stingy she was not, nor sparing of gifts, shining treasures to the Geat people. She considered Modthrith, that renowned folk queen, and her fearful crimes. Not any man among her retainers would dare approach, the prince excepting, or would look in her eye by the light of day, knowing deadly bonds, braided by hand, would swiftly follow. That sentence was ordained. Next, after the hand tying, an ornately patterned sword was appointed to settle things and give the kill stroke. Not a queenly custom for a lady to perform, though peerless be her beauty, for a truce weaver, by pretending injury, to plunder the life of a beloved man. Hemming's kinsman halted all that. Then the ale drinkers offered another tale. Said she performed fewer hate crimes, caused less evil strife, after she was given, gold adorned, to the young champion of excellent nobility, arriving at Offa's floor, where she had sought to journey over the sea's calm at her father's urging. Afterward, on the throne, she was well regarded for the good she did, used well her life as long as it was given, and held a high love with the heroic chief, the best of all men between two seas, of all humankind, as I have heard it. Among all nations, Offa, therefore, in gifts and warring, that weapon-bold man was widely honored, wisely ruling his own homeland. From him sprang Eomer, a help to heroes, who was Hemming's kinsman, the scion of Garmund, and was skilled in battle.
Then the hard man and his hand-picked crew himself trod the shore, over the sea barrens, the wide sandways. The sun, the world candle, shone sharp from the south. After the journey they strode swiftly to where they had heard their virtuous young king, Oniontheo's bane, the shield for heroes, within his stronghold was handing out rings. Beowulf's return was soon proclaimed to Higelac. News that the warrior's defense, shield companion, was back alive from his distant adventures, unharmed and on his way to the homestead. The floor in the hall was quickly cleared at the king's command for the men on foot. After his liege lord with gracious speech had greeted the survivor in clear words, Beowulf sat down, kinsman with kinsman, and Herit's daughter, dear to the people, sent draughts of mead through the wide room to noble hands. Then Higelac began to ask courteous questions in that high hall of his companion, eager to hear the sea Geat's tale. How did you fare on the way, dear Beowulf, after you chose to seek far-off adventure, sailed to fight that feud over the salt water, help in Heorot? Did you lessen the woes which were widely known of that great King Hrothgar? My heart filled with anxious care, seething with wells of sadness, not trusting to fate, dear friend. How I pleaded with you then not to challenge him, that spirit of slaughter, and let the South Danes settle their feud with Grendel themselves. God be thanked that I see you here again, safe and sound. Then Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, replied, That fierce conflict is no great secret, Lord Higelac, to be kept from people. That long struggle I had with Grendel in that land where he brought sorrow and endless misery to the great mass of victory shieldings, I took vengeance for it all. Grendel's kin, evil on earth, will never boast of our clash at dawn, however long that vile race might last, shrouded in malice. Once I arrived, I went to the ring hall to greet Hrothgar. That son of Halfdan knew When that son of Halfdan knew my purpose, he found me a place at once on the bench where his own son sat. The throng were joyful. In my whole life, I never saw such mead revelry amongst hall guests.
The famous queen, the people's peace pledge, passed through the hall, urging her young sons. Often she gave out twisted gold rings before taking her seat. Before the hall thanes, Hrothgar's daughter offered the ale cup to the earls in turn. The floor sitters called her Freawaru. I heard that name when she handed the studded cup to the heroes in that place. Promised is she, gold adorned and young, to the heir of Hrothgar. The king of the Scyldings, the kingdom's keeper, thought to arrange this. He thinks it wise to wed the woman, ward off a feud and settle slaughter, but seldom ever when fighting is finished does the feud spear rest. even for the briefest while, though the bride's good. Perhaps he will be unhappy, the Hrothgar's prince, and each battle thane in his band of kin, when he walks on the wood with that woman at his side, and noble sons of Danes are received with honor, shining at their waists the wealth of ancestors, hard and ring-adorned, Hrothgar treasures as long as their hands could hold weapons, till their own lives were led to doom with their beloved companions in linden play. Then the old ash warrior, who always remembers all the men's spear deaths, spies the ring hilt and speaks over beer. His spirit is grim. Sad-minded, he undertakes to test the soul of a young champion with his innermost thoughts. The war bale to awaken, these words he speaks. Can you discern that sword, my friend, that costly iron? It was carried to the fight in your father's hands on his final journey of donning the war mask, when the Danes felled him, held the battlefield, when heroes were routed, and Withergild was vanquished. Those valiant Scyldings. Now, one of the sons of the slayers is here, preening with his precious steel, proudly murder-boasting. He walks on this wood, wears the treasure, owns the heirloom, which ought by right be yours. At every opportunity, he urges and reminds with cruel word gift, till comes the time when the bride's escort, owing to his father's deeds, and the bite of a sword is blood-stained in sleep, forfeits his life. His foe at that point escapes alive in country he knows well. Then both factions will break their words, the oath-swearings of earls, the anger boils up in Prince Ingald. Afterward comes the cooling wife-love and the waxing of his cares. Though thus I expect, on the part of the Hrothgards, that the Danish treaty is troubled by deceit, and their friendship not fast.
But I must say more of Grendel, so that you might know, giver of treasure, what happened there in the hand-to-hand fight. When the sun, heaven's gem, had glided to earth, the guest, full of ire, dark horror of twilight, appeared where we, unharmed, yet guarded the hall. There for Honcio came the losing struggle. Foully foredoomed, he fell first, the armed champion. That famed, magnificent warrior Grendel took in his maw and swallowed our dear friend's body, devouring it whole. Baleful-minded, the bloody-toothed killer was not yet ready to leave the gold hall. Loath he was to depart empty-handed, but, famed for his might, he tested me. Gripping eagerly, his pouch hung down, strange and roomy, held fast by clasps all cunningly wrought, cleverly devised, devilishly crafted out of dragon skin. That dread demon wanted to cram me and many another innocent inside, but was bound to fail when I rose up, sudden with anger, and faced him there. It would take too long to recount how he paid with his hand for his every evil, how I honored your people, my lord, by my deeds. He fled for a little while, he escaped with his life for the moment, leaving his right hand behind in Heorot, and the wretch, with gloom in his heart, vanishing from there, sank into the mere. The friend of the Scyldings gifted me with beaten gold for that bloody fight, many a treasure when morning came and we sat down to the banquet table, gladness and glee. The aged Hrothgar, that daring warrior, a generous king, one knowing the tales of long ago, now strummed on his ancient harp, made its wood quiver for our pleasure. Now sang out a lay, both true and tragic,
now rightly related some strange story. At times, he began to mourn his youth, that veteran soldier, bound by the years and his battle strength, his heart grieved. A winter-wise man, remembering much. So there within we took our pleasure the whole day long, till another night came to mankind. Then Grendel's dam, mourning her dead son, Weder Spain, eager for revenge, swiftly appeared and retaliating for her son's death, savagely slew a warrior. Thus life left Ashera, old lore-wise counselor. Nor could the Danes, weary of death, lay the dear man on the funeral pyre and burn his body when morning came. The fiend had clasped his corpse and fled, taken him under the mountain stream. That was the bitterest grief that Hrothgar, the leader of the folk, had ever known. Then that chieftain, his mind troubled, asked in your name for a noble deed, that I risk my life in the water's surge and gain glory there. He promised gifts. In that whelm of water, as is known, I met the grim, ireful guard of the lake. There we fought a while, hand to hand, the pool seethed with gore. I beheaded Grendel's mother in those deep halls with a mighty blade. I barely chanced to come out alive. It was not yet fated. And Halfdan's son, bulwark of heroes, gave me once more a wealth of treasure.
Thus that nation's king did what was due. I forewent none of the gifts he had promised, no reward for my might. Halfdan's son granted me riches to my greater glory. These, warrior king, I bring to you, offer them graciously, for all depends on your favor. Hrothgar, I've no near kin but you. They brought in the boar head standard, the battle-steep helm, the hoar silver mail, the beauteous blade. His tale continued. Hrothgar, wise ruler, gave me this war gear, with words instructing me first to tell you of its provenance. He said that Hrothgar, king of Shieldings, his elder brother, long owned it, but though Hrothgar, his brave son, was loyal, he did not choose to grant him the armor. Now use it well. 4 russet mares, like in speed, I hear, followed the treasure. Beowulf offered as gifts to the king both bay horses and the hoard of riches, so kin should do. Not weave nets of malice for others, bringing friends to death by secret arts. Beowulf was loyal to his uncle Hrothgar. In battle, each minded the other's cause. He gave Hygge a necklace, a wondrous jeweled work way Elveau gave him, that king's daughter, and 3 horses, supple with shining saddles. Her breast was adorned with a treasure so given. Bold he was, Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, a man known for great deeds in battle. He lived for glory, slew no companions in drink, bore him a heart untroubled, and held to man's God-given strength that generous gift, courage in conflict. The sons of the Geats had long held him in little regard, thought him worthless, nor had the commander of their troops shown him the honor on the mead benches. They said he was, above all, a weakling, lacking in daring, but blessed with glory. He saw recompense for such troubles. Then Hrothgar, brave in battle, a bulwark for heroes, had Hrethel's heirloom brought, garnished with gold, no finer a treasure, by way of a blade came from the hoard, than that sword he laid in Beowulf's lap. and he granted him 7,000 hides, half a country with a hall and joint rule. Both owned ancestral land in that nation, part of the earth that was theirs by right, though more of that land was to the elder. Afterwards, in later days, it so happened when Hrothgar was dead that Headred, his son, fell to the swords in fierce battle that sought him, baneful under his shield. When battle shieldings, eager for war, fought Heredit's nephew and conquered, thereupon that wide kingdom passed into Beowulf's hands. And he ruled well. For 50 winters, grown old and wise, warden of the nation, till one dark night, a dragon began to prowl that guarded a hoard in its high house, a stone barrow set stark, the path below unknown to men. A certain man had entered and groped around in the heathen hoard. His hands wrapped themselves around some fine goblet he had later removed. Though by outwitting the sleeping dragon with a thief's guile, it angered the creature, as the neighboring folk soon discovered.
He who had sorely injured the dragon had no intent to steal from the hoard. In dire distress, that thief of unknown parents, that guest who'd gained entry haunted by a crime swiftly detected, fled hostile blows in need of shelter. There, a dread terror gripped the guest. There, the sinner stood in deadly peril. He'd sought gold. In that earthen vault, there was many an ancient treasure, for some great man in former times had chosen to hide that vast hoard, the dear heirlooms of a noble race. Death took them all in days gone by, till one warrior left that people, the last of his line, mourning his friends, hoped to delay and cherish the treasure a little while longer. Already the barrow overlooked the shore and the headland above the waves made certain by craft. There, of the earl's treasure, he placed a hoard of rings, a hand-wrought heap of plated gold, and spoke these words: "Now, earth, hold these lordly treasures that men could not. Good men once tore all this from you. War has taken my dear people. One by one, they fell to a fearful frenzy and left me this. They saw joy in these halls. Now is none to wield the sword, polish the flagon, precious cup. The heroes are gone. The hard helm, with its hasps of gold, its finery must fade. The armorers sleep with war masks they would burnish, and the battle shirt that endured the bite of the iron blade when shield shattered decays with the dead. Nor will ringmail wander widely on warriors' shoulders among the heroes. No joy from the harp its quivering frame. No fierce flying hawk to soar the hall, no fleet-footed horses to trample the yard. Baleful death has sent forth out of this life a vast host, my kinsmen. Thus, saddened in mind, sighing with grief, the last of all, he wandered sorrowing day and night, till the tide of death reached his heart. Then, a naked dragon, a twilight scourer, the burning malice who seeks out barrows flying by night, breathed in fire, found hoard joy, stone standing open. Men on this earth fear him greatly. He seeks evil underground. There, winter-wise, he guards his heathen gold, though it does him no good.
Swa, se theod shea the threo hund wintra, heol on chrusen, hordarna sum etchen kraftig. Och that hina an abeach monon mora. Man drichtna bär wrath fatted wagga, friodo wara bär clafford zina.
So, the enemy of men, heirloom crafty, guarded the hoard for 300 winters, gold in the ground, until one angered him, enraging his heart. The thief carried the cup to his lord, garnished with gold, encrusted with gems. He asked his owner for a peace promise to heal their feud. The hoard had been raided, its riches drained by a precious cup. His lord relented, seeing the cup with longing eyes. The worm had awakened. Strife was renewed. He sniffed along the stones, sensing the man scent, his enemy's tracks. The thief had crept too near the dragon. Yet an undoomed man may survive exile and suffering with good fate and God's grace. The hoard guard sought eagerly along the ground to greet the thief who had caught him napping, harmed the sleep. Fierce and flaming, the savage worm searched near the barrow. No one skulked in that barrow wasteland. On the scent of battle, he was keen for killing. Sometimes he crawled back in the barrow, searching for the cup. The dragon had discovered that a man had disturbed his beautiful treasure. He waited with hot patience until evening, a barrow guard swollen with fury. He would trade death fire for the drinking cup, the taste of rage. The daylight dropped down as the worm wanted. He would not wait long near the cave wall, but would soar in the air with savage fire. The onset was ominous for the Yeats on the ground. The end would be agony to their treasure giver, their beloved lord. Then the earth guest began to vomit fire, scorching the bright halls. The blaze spread like a burning light, a terror to men. The spitfire left nothing living, nothing quick among the dead. The worm's rage was alive in the dark. His cruel killing, his slaughter flames both near and far, his feud of fire with the neighboring Yeats. Then he fled to his cave hall, secret, secure, hiding at dawn. He had circled and slain, sheathing houses and men in a glaze of flame. He trusted his cave, his courage, his barrow, and battle rage. But he was sorely deceived. He holed up under stone.
Swiftly, Beowulf heard of the threat that his home, the finest of houses, the Yeats' throne hall, had perished. Such was grief to him, mind sorrow, that he felt he must have angered the Lord, the eternal ruler, broken the law of old. Gloomy thoughts welled within him, unlike himself. The fire drake had burnt the fortress to the ground, the folk's stronghold by the shore. For that, the war king, the lord of the waiters, sought revenge. That first of earls ordered a defense, a warrior's shield made all of iron, wondrously wrought, knowing that limewood was no help, no timber proof against flame. Great and good, the noble hero had reached the end of his life in this world, and the dragon too, for all his long hold on the horde. Yet the ringlord scorned to attack the wide-flying worm with an army. For himself, he had no fear of the fight, scant regard of the dragon's fire, nor its courage or power, for he'd endured many a near-run battle, many another hostile clash, since, ever the victor, he had cleansed Hrothgar's great hall, and overwhelmed Grendel's tribe, that hateful race. Not least was that hand-to-hand struggle when Hrothgar, the king of the Geats, Hrethel's heir, friend of the folk, fell in Friesland, in the heat of battle, beaten down by blood-soaked blades. Beowulf returned on his own from the sea, bearing 30 men's battle gear in his arm as he crossed the ocean. The Hedwara had no reason to cheer that fight on the field, who carried their limewood shields against him. Few returned to their homes again. Ecgtheow's son crossed the waters, sad and alone, to reach his people. Hygd offered him the hoard and kingdom, rings and ring throne, not trusting in her son's power to hold the land against all others. And Hrothgar dead. Yet in their misery, they could not persuade noble Beowulf to act in any way as lord over Heardred. Nor did he wish to hold kingship, yet graciously and with honor he gave the prince friendly counsel, until he was ready to rule the folk as king of the Weder Geats. Exiles arrived then from over the sea, the sons of Otera. They'd rebelled against Onela, the finest of sea kings, helm of the Shiflings, famous leader, who dispensed treasure in Sweden. That spelt doom for Hrothgar's son. For helping them, he had a mortal wound, a swing of the sword for hospitality. While Onela, son of Onyanthiau, after Herodred's death went home, leaving Beowulf to hold the throne, rule the Geats. He was a good king.
In after days, he achieved revenge for his prince's death. To Eadgils, son of Ochtere, he stood friend, sending help over the wide sea, warriors and weapons. Fought a cold campaign, killed Onela. Thus, this son of Ecgtheow survived every battle, each deadly conflict, doing brave deeds until that day when he was forced to face the dragon. Filled with anger as one of the 12, the Lord of the Geats sought the worm. By now he knew the source of the feud, this hatred for man, for to his hand from the thief came the precious cup. He was the 13th in that company, the one who had caused this strife, their sad captive, whom they forced to show the way, lead them to the place against his will, to the earth hall he knew, the underground barrow by the sea surge, the wave wash that was filled inside with gems and goldwork, its vile guard eager for battle, keeper of gold of old under the earth. It would not be easy for any man to strike a bargain there. The battle-hardened king, gold friend to the Geats, sat down on the cliff top and wished his companions good luck. His heart was sad. The fate loomed all too near. An old king, restless yet ready, about to depart, life from limb, must meet to go seeking his soul's reward. Not long would his spirit be twined with the flesh.
Thus Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, spoke. I survived many a battle when young. In times of war, I remember them all. I was 7 winters old, and Hrethel, lord of the horde, friend of the folk, took me from father to have and hold. Was kinsman to me, feast and wealth. I was no less in standing, no less of a man to him in that house than his own sons, Herebeald, Hathcune, and my Hrothgar. An unfitting deathbed the eldest found when Hathcune, his brother and friend, loosed an arrow from horn-tipped bow, missed the mark, and shot his kinsman. Brother killed brother with bloody bolt, the deed irreparable, a grievous wrong wearying the heart, and yet never a way to find requital for that parting from life. Such is the tragedy of when some old man sees his young son swing on the gallows, food for the ravens. His age and wisdom provide him nothing, nor bring comfort. Ever reminded on waking each morning his son is elsewhere, he lacks all interest in living on, or awaiting some other born heir to his all, when the son he once had, driven by his deeds, has found out death. He gazes, grieving at where his son lived, ruined hallways, wind-blown wastelands, bereft of joy. The horsemen are sleeping. The heroes are hidden under the ground. No harp sound, no joy in the courtyards as once there was. He sings the lament.
He sings the lament, then takes to his bed, the last of his line. The fields and the homestead seem all too empty. And thus, with Herebeald's death, the king helm of the Weders suffered, heart sorrow welling, and no payment, not a whit, could he exact from the slayer, nor show, though he held him in hatred, his lack of love by hostility against him. Filled with sorrow that fell on him sorely, he turned from joy, choosing God's light. A man of great wealth, he left to his heirs land and stronghold, and departed this life. Then, over the wide water, Swade and Yeot wrought their quarrel, suffering and strife. Hard fighting then after Hrethel was slain, when Onyantheow's heirs waged warfare in fury. They had no wish for friendship over the sea, but around Hresnabjor, the ruined hill, they carried out raids with dread malice, campaigned savagely, fire and feud, avenged by my own kin. There, one of the kings paid with his life, a harsh exchange. It was Hathcune then, lord of the Yeots, who fell in that battle. Yet Hrothgar's swordsmen took vengeance at dawn with bright blades against Slayer. There Onyantheow was attacked by Eofor, his war helm cloven. The aged Shilfing fell, battle pale, though his hand recalled many a feud. It foiled not the death blow. I repaid Hrothgar the treasures he gave me. In war with the sword, I earned what was granted me. He gave me land, gave me joy of this earth, a country. He had no need for some lesser warrior, eager for warfare from among the Yifthas or Speardanes or some Swede that his wealth might buy. First in the ranks, I would always demand to march before him, and so shall I always seek to in battle, while this sword endures, which has ever served me early and late, since I slew De Hraven before the army, the Hugas champion, in mortal combat. Noble and brave was that standard bearer, but he brought no precious adornments to his Frisian king, no breastplate of mine. He fell with his company, not by the blade, by my battle grip. I broke the bone house of his heartbeat. Now shall Blade's Edge, hand and hard sword, fight for the horde.
Beowulf spoke. He brought the boast one final time. Frequently I braved battles in my youth, and yet again I seek a feud as an old folk warden doing a great feat. If only that fiend will come out from that cavern of his. Then he found words for his faithful men, unafraid in their helmets one final time. I'd wear no sword or weapon against this worm, if only I knew another way in which to grapple with the great dragon as I held Grendel. But hot battle fire is my expectation, poisonous and fierce. Therefore, I'll bear the board and Björni. I will not flee a footstep, not one, from the treasure warden. The wall is where we shall fare then as weird decrees, that lord of men. My mind is set. I'll hold my boasting with this battle flyer. Hold on the mound, you men in armor, safe in your ringcoats, to see which of us better weathers the wounds dealt out in battle's rush. This isn't your road. Not a fitting measure for any man but me to forcefully deal with the fiend on the horde, nobly daring to do this thing, bravely winning the gold. Else battle takes me, and the final cut carries away your lord. The courageous warrior with round shield stood hard in his helmet and hauberk. He went under the stone cliff, trusted the strength of a single man. So not the coward's path. The good veteran, virtuous and manly, who lived through battles, long war crashes, sword troops clash, saw by the wall a stone arch standing. A stream from there broke from the barrow, the brook swelling hot with battle fire. Unburning he could not go for any time the gold hoard reach, or endure the deep for the dragon's flame. The wader's prince, with war raging, released from his breath battle language. The stout-hearted stormed, the sound traveled in. The battle radiant roared under gray stone, hatred was stirred. The horde guard knew true warrior's speech. No time was left to seek friendship. First there came the warrior's breath, battle sweat hot out from the stone. The earth thundered. The Geat sword king swung his board shield against the horror spirit beneath the horde barrow. The ring-coiled drake, driven in heart, sought out the fight. The fine war king drew out his sword, unslow of edge the old heirloom. Each to the other, hostile-minded, held war terror. The friend's war leader, firm in his heart, with wide shield stood, waited in his gear. When the dragon coiled quickly together, the burning coil came gliding then swiftly towards fate. The shield guarded well the famous lord's life and body for a shorter time than he sought, mindful when the friend leader on that foremost day needed to fight. Fate did not grant him glory in war. The waiter's lord raised up his hand, that horror struck with the old heirloom. But its edges failed. Bright on the bone, it bit less strongly than the folk ruler, with affliction beset, needed for battle. Then the barrow guard bore mind anger after battle swing. He breathed death fire. The battle light sprang widely forth. The wealth friend of Yeats did not boast of triumph. Battle naked, war blade weakened as worthy iron should never do. No easy road that the sword-famous son of Ecgtheow would wish to leave his land dwelling. But against his will, he must make a new home and dwell elsewhere, as every man must let go of lone days. Not long afterwards, the mighty warriors met up again. The horde god grew bold. Heart breath welled up yet another time. The tribe ruler, circled by fire, suffered distress. The hand companions, prince's children, stood not at his hand in a heap of swordsmen filled with war virtue, but they fled to the woods to save their lives. Sorrow surged in one clan thane's heart. Kinship can never turn aside a whit in the well-minded.
He was called Beowulf, Weohstan's son, a worthy shield warrior, a prince of the Schulfings, kinsman of Elfhera. He saw his liege lord suffer heat under his war helmet. He recalled the honors he had received from him, the wealthy homestead of the Wemendings, every folk right that his father had possessed. He could not hold back. His hand seized the pale linden shield, and he drew his old sword. It was known among men as the heirloom of Eanmund, son of Otera. That friendless exile was slain in battle with the edge of that sword by Weohstan, who brought to his kinsman the burnished helmet, the ringed byrnie, the old giant work sword. Onela gave to him the war equipment of his young kinsman, the shining armor. He never spoke of a feud, though he had slain his brother's son. He kept that war gear for a great many years, the blade and byrnie, until his boy could perform brave deeds like his father before him, and gave him, among the Yeats, that battle gear, every piece of it, when old he departed this life and went forth. That was the first time that the young warrior had to weather the storm of battle beside his noble lord. His courage did not melt, nor did his kinsman's legacy weaken in war. The worm discovered that when they began to meet together. Beowulf spoke, said to his companions many true words. He was mournful at heart. I remember the time that we took mead together, when we made promises to our prince in the beer hall. He gave us these rings, that we would pay him back for this battle gear, these helmets and hard swords, if such a need as this ever befell him. For this, he chose us from the army for this adventure by his own will. He thought us worthy of glory, and gave me these treasures. For this, he considered us good spear warriors,
proud helmet wearers, even though our prince, shepherd of his people, intended to perform this act of courage all alone, because he has gained the most glory among men, reckless heroic deeds. Now the day has come that our noble lord has need of the support of good warriors. Let us go to it, help our warlord despite the heat, grim fire terror. God knows, for my part, that I would much prefer that the flames should enfold my body alongside my gold-giving lord. It seems wrong to me that we should bear shields back to our land unless we might first finish off this foe, defend the life of the Prince of the Weders. I know full well that he does not deserve to suffer this torment all alone among the Geatish troop, or fall in the struggle. Now, sword and helmet, byrnie and battle dress shall be ours together. He hurried through the deadly fumes, bore his helmet to the aid of his lord, spoke little. Dear Beowulf, do all well as in your youth you said you would, that you would never let in your whole life your fame decline. Now, firm in deeds, single-minded noblemen, with all your strength, you must protect your life. I will support you. After these words, the worm came angrily, terrible, vicious creature, a second time, scorched with surging flames, seeking out his enemies, the hated men. The hot flames rolled in waves, burned the shield to its rim. The byrnie was not of any use to the young soldier, but he showed his courage under his kinsman's shield, the young warrior, when his own was charged to cinders. Still, the battle king remembered his glory, and with his mighty strength swung his war blade with savage force, so that it stuck in the skull. Nailing shattered, the sword of Beowulf weakened at battle, ancient and gray. It was not granted to him that iron-edged weapons might ever help him in battle. His hand was too strong. He, who I am told, overtaxed every blade with his mighty blows when he bore to battle a wound-hearted weapon. It was no help to him at all. Then that threat to the people for a third time. Fierce fire dragon, remembering his feud, rushed on the brave man, hot and bloodthirsty when he saw the chance, seized him by the neck in his bitter jaws. He was bloodied by his mortal wounds. Blood gushed in waves. Then I have heard, in his king's hour of need, the Jarl beside him showed his bravery, the noble skill which was his nature. He did not heed that head when he helped his kinsman. That brave man's hand was burned, so that he struck that savage foe a little lower down, the soldier in armor, so that his sword plunged in, bejeweled and bloody, so that the fire began to subside afterwards. The king himself still had his wits, drew the war dagger, bitter and battle sharp, that he wore in his byrnie. The protector of the Weders carved through the worm's midsection. They felled their foe. Their force took his life, and they both together had brought him down. The two noble kinsmen, a thane at need, as a man should be. But for that, for the prince was his last work of victory by his own will of worldly adventures. When the wound which the earth dragon had worked on him began to burn and swell, he soon realized that in his breast was an evil force, a poison welling. Then the nobleman went, still wise in thought, so that he sat on a seat by the wall. On that work of the giants he gazed, saw how stone arches and sturdy pillars held up the inside of that ancient earth hall. Then with his hands the thane immeasurably good, bathed with water, his beloved lord, the great prince, spattered with gore, sated with battle, and unstrapped his helmet. Beowulf spoke despite his wound, that deadly cut. He knew clearly that his allotted life had run out, and his joys in the earth all gone was his portion of days, death immeasurably near. Now I should wish to give my war gear to my son, if there had been such, flesh of my flesh, if fate had granted me any heir. I held this people 50 winters. There was no folk king, not any of the neighboring tribes who dared to face me with hostile forces or threaten attack. The decrees of fate I awaited on earth, held well what was mine. I sought no intrigues, nor swore many false or wrongful oaths. For all that, I may have joy, though sick with mortal wounds, because the ruler of men need not reproach me with the murder of kinsmen when my life quits my body. Now go quickly to look at the hoard under the hoary stone. Dear Beowulf, now that the worm lies dead, sleeps with his wounds, stripped of his treasure, hurry, so that I might witness that ancient wealth, those golden goods, might eagerly gaze on the bright, precious gems, and I might more gently, for that great wealth, give up my life and lordship, which I have held so long.
Then, so I heard, the son of Weohstan, after listening to the battle-torn one, his wounded lord at that command, swiftly went down in his battle gear, his ringmail under the barrow's roof. Once he had passed the seat, victorious, the brave warrior saw a heap of gems in the worm's den, that flyer by twilights. He saw gold glittering over the ground, wonders on walls, stands of goblets made by men of old, bereft of ornament, dull with neglect, with piles of helmets, old and rusted, with a host of arm rings cunningly clasped. How readily treasure, gold in the ground, may escape from any man's hold, however well hidden. Also, a standard, all of gold, hanging there, high over the hoard, a most marvelous hand-wrought masterwork, shedding light so he could see that wealth on the ground, examine the treasures. There was no sign of the worm. The blade had finished him. Then the warrior alone, as I have heard, plundered the hoard, all the giant's work, filled his arms with the flagons and plate as he wished, and took the standard too, the bright banner for the old king's blade, with its edge of iron, had already ended the one-time guardian of the treasure vault, the dragon that waged terror by fire, welled forth of a midnight till in violence he died. Beowulf was in haste now, keen to return, spurred on by riches. Anxiety weighed on the brave warrior. Would he find him alive, the king of the Weders, all strength lost in the place where he had left him earlier? Bearing the treasure to his great chieftain, he found his lord bleeding, his life ending. He began to lave him with water once more, until a word's blade tip broke through the breast hoard as the old man saw gold. To the master of all, to the King of glory, to the eternal Lord, I give words of thanks for all the treasures that I see before me, and that I was able to gain such wealth for the folk before death could take me. I have paid with my life for this hoard. Now you must look to the nation's needs. I can hold on no longer. Tell those men famous in war to build me a bright mound on a cape by the sea's edge after the fire. It will tower high on the whale's headland and serve there to remind my people of me, so that those on the sea will call it by name, Beowulf's Barrow, as they steer their ships through ocean mist when they voyage afar. Then the valiant warrior took from his neck the golden torque and gave it to the thane, telling the young spearman to use it well, and the shirt of mail, and his gilded helm. You are the last of us, last of all our race, the Waymondings. Fate has swept away all my kin, sent the Jarls in their strength to their destined end. I must follow them. That was the old king's final word of all those in his breast before the funeral fire, the pyre's hot seething, though his soul yet went seeking the true, steadfast power. Then it went hard with the young man, seeing the one he loved most dearly lying there at life's end in suffering. The dreaded earth drake, the dragon, his killer, also lay there bereft of life, baleful, beaten down. The worm, coiled in wickedness, no longer had mastery of the ring hoard. The hard hammer, battle-notched iron blade finished him. That wide flying one, stilled by wounds, fell to earth beside the treasure hoard. No longer would he weave through the air in the depth of night, displaying himself, proud of his riches. He had fallen to earth through that battle warrior's handiwork. Indeed, there were few men in this world, so I have heard, with the strength to win, however daring they were in their deeds, against that scourge's venomous breath, or had the courage to touch the hoard if they found its guardian alive on watch in its barrow. Beowulf's share of treasure was bought with the death. Each had reached the end of his lease of life.
Lo, it was not long that the cravens crept from the copse, timid troth breakers, 10 altogether. They dared not earlier draw their spears in the great need of that good prince, but shamefully they bore their shields, arms of war, to where the elder lay, and watched Beowulf. Wearily he sat, the foot soldier near the shoulder of the Lord, hoping water would heal him, but it helped not at all, nor might he on earth, for all he yearned, to hold the life in the leader of the war, nor of the Almighty alter aught. The doom of God commands each one, as it always does. Then from the youth was the grim answer forthcoming to those who'd forsaken their courage. Beowulf spoke, Weostan's son, sorrow-hearted, seeing these unloved ones, said, "So would he say, who wills to speak sooth, that the true Lord gave treasure to you, the gear of war in which you stand, helm and byrnie, given to hall-sitters who at the ale-bench often were sitting, liegemen with lord, such the likeliest as he might find anywhere, far or near. Utterly now has he abandoned the war garments, when war befell him. The folk king never needed to boast of war comrades when God wished of him, lord of victories. He himself avenged, alone with edges, when audacity was needed. Little might I give life protection at the battle, but nevertheless I strove with my kinsmen beyond my strength. Ever the dragon was worse when struck with my weapon, my mortal foe, and his fire less strongly flared in his head. Defenders too few surged round the king when sorrow befell him. Now shall the giving of swords and the gain of gold, all your people's pleasures of home and loved things end. From all land rights now must your clan and each of your kin leave and be lost. When the lords from afar find out about your flight, infamous deed, death would be better for every lord than a life of shame.
He bade then the work of battle be told to the camp or the cliff, where the king's thanes all morning long lingered, waiting, all sad-minded, shield-bearers expecting either their lord's return or the last of his days. Then he who rode right up to Cape by no means was silent with his new tidings. He spoke his heart truth in hearing of all. Now the joy giver of the nation of Yeots, the wader's lord, lays in his deathbed, holds place of slaughter from serpent's deeds. His life bane is lying alongside him, sickened by knife wounds. His sword could not make any cut in the monster's hide, work any wound. Weary-hearted, Weostan's son, Beowulf, sits there, looks after Beowulf, lying there dead. One noble or another holds the death watch over friend and foe. Our folk may expect a battle time when the truth is known by the Franks and Frisians, and the fall of our king is a story not secret. The strife was begun hard with the Franks after Hrothgar came, sailing with his fleet to the Frisian shores, where the Hetwara Franks humbled him in battle, advanced with valor and vaster forces. So the battler in his byrnie was bowed down by force and fell in the ranks. No rings were given, prince to foot troop, and from that day no mercy comes from Merovingians. Nor do I expect peace or friendship from the Swedish tribes, but it is told widely that King Onyantheo cut away the life of Hrethel's son, Hathkune, at Hrefna Wood, when in arrogant pride the people of the Yeots brought the spear clash to the battle Swedes. Swiftly, the sage sire of Ochtera, long steeped in battlecraft, started his onslaught, cut down the Sea King, rescued his own bride, Onala's mother, and Ochtera's also, the gold-bereft girl of a former day. Then he led the pursuit of his life enemy until they fled, full of their sorrows, no king to lead them, into the copse of Hrethel. His huge army beset those sword leadings. He threatened more harm, hounded through the night that weary warband, all wounded and forlorn. He said that at morning you would meet my sword, and some would swing by sinew from gallows as amusement for birds. But those miserable ones took consolation at the coming of sunrise. They heard Hrothgar's horn and trumpet hailing the Yeots when hard on the tracks of that group of kinsmen the good one arrived. The bloody swath of the Swedes and Yeots, the men's slaughter rush was seen widely, how those folks had stirred feud among themselves. The Swedish king, sadly, departed, followed by kinsmen to find his stronghold. High-born Onyantheo hied away farther, had quickly learned the craft of Hrothgar, the bold one's battle skill, wouldn't brave opposition, had no trust in fighting, defending the horde and children and brides against brine warriors, against the battle-farers. The blended-haired withdrew, fled from the fastness with the folk of the Swedes, who were followed with haste. Higelac banner soon penetrated the place of protection after Hrethel's thanes thronged the encampment. King Onyanthale, the aging one, halted when facing a hardened edge. The folk ruler was forced to submit to Eofor's will. Anger filling him, Wolf Wonrading with a weapon reached him, thus drawing blood bursting from the veins beneath his hair. Nevertheless, the Swede, ancient and unquaking, quit his retreat, turned at that point, and repaid swiftly war's slaughter crash with a worse exchange. Nor might the swift son of Wonred give a hand blow to the graying king, who had cut through the helmet on his head earlier, and Wolf stumbled, all stained with blood, fell to the world floor. Not his weird to die, he would heal himself, although hurt deeply. Heloc's thane, the hardy Eofor, allowed the old blade broadsword of giants on the brain roof of giants to break over the board when his brother was felled. The folk's warden, the king, stumbled, mortally stricken. Many the brothers who bound kinsmen raised them at once when opportunity arose, so the Yeots could seize the slaughter place. Meanwhile, Eofor stripped Onyantheo's war kit, taking the old one's ironcloth shirt, hardened broadsword, and banded shield. The hoary one's gear was borne to Higelac, who received those prizes, promised reward among the kin people. Quickly, he honored that. Prince of the Waders repaid the battle rush of Wolf and Eofor with wealth staggering. On returning home, Higelac gave each 100,000 hides of earthland and woven ring shirts. No warrior on earth blamed them for the rewards for battle deeds. Then to Eofor, he gave his own daughter, brightener of his home, as his bond of loyalty.
That is the feud, the fierce conflict, the people's war hate. So I expect the Swedish people will seek us out upon learning that our Lord, who fast kept from our foes both kingdom and horde, when the brave Skölding champions fell, and who worked nobly for the welfare of the people, and further still performed hero deeds, is lying dead. Let's make haste to look upon the Lord of the folk, and go along with the giver of rings as he sent to the pyre. No small portion, but the whole measure, heaped in piles, grimly purchased, gotten at a cost which at long last was his life itself, for precious gold. The pyre shall envelop it. The flames shall eat it. No earl will wear treasure in memory, nor maidens have around their throats rings as adornments, but will roam as exiles, bereft of gold, sad in their minds for no mean time, since the warrior's leader has laid aside laughter, games, and song joy. Now shall the spears on many cold mornings be clutched in hands, nor will the warriors wake to the harp, but the raven flying over fated men shall say to the eagle, he succeeded with meat when he strove with the wolf, stripping the bodies. Thus the brave man brought them the news, a tale of woe. He wasn't wrong much in words and prophecies. The warriors rose and walked down sadly to see the wonder below Eagle's Cliff. Their eyes gushed with tears. On the sand they found soul gone, lifeless, resting in a rock bed, their ring giver in earlier times. The end of days was brought to the good one. When the battle king of the weather folk met an amazing death. On the way they passed on the plain opposite a marvelous white, a worm on the ground, loathsome fire drake lying there dead, scorched with death flames, adorned with horrors. His length was a full 50 foot paces lying on the sand. It had soared with joy during the dark night time, then dove down again to seek its den. Death held it fast, the end to its joy in its earth cavern. Beside him were piled pitchers and cups, plates sitting there, and swords finely wrought, all eaten through by 1,000 winters in the earth, rusting, resting in the depths, an inheritance held by a curse. The wealth of the ancients was wound in a spell, so that no man on earth might enter that ring hall, unless the Shaper, the shield of mankind, the truth's king of victories, should accord permission to any man seeming to meet him, to any he wished to open that hoard.
Then it was plain, it profited not the one who heinously had hidden the treasure under a wall. Its warden had killed a man most rare. The murder feud was swiftly accounted. Curious it seems that a mighty ruler might meet the end of his span of life. No longer may he sit, a man in the mead hall among his friends. So it was with Beowulf when he sought the guardian in a bitter fight, far from knowing in what way he would leave his life in this world. For when mighty princes had placed the gold, buried it deep, to doomsday they cursed it, so that the plunderer of that place should be grievously racked if guilty of sin, haunted by fiends, fast in their hell bonds, unless the Shaper had shown favor, granted his grace to the gold seeker. Welof spoke then, Weohstan's son. Misery is often by many endured. Through one man's will, we have just seen this. Our beloved sovereign was not dissuaded by us folk, nor kingdom shepherd by counsel of words, that he should not greet the gold keeper. Let him lie there, where long he had dwelt in earth hall waiting. He held to his fate. The hoard is open, but grimly gotten. Too great the fate that carried to that place the king of our people. Within that vault, I viewed all of the hall's prizes. When a way was left clear, and most ungentle the journey I took under that earth wall, eagerly I seized, I filled my hands with hoard treasure, and a heavy burden, and took it out to my king and liege lord, who said much to me, his mind alert, an old man in his sorrows. He sent you greetings. He asked that you build a barrow towering atop his pyre for your prince's deeds, mighty and glorious. Of men, he was the worthiest warrior the world threw out. While he could revel in riches in hall, let us return, travel hastily to seek and view the sea of treasures, hidden gold stores. I will guide the way, closely will inspect rings and broad gold, cunning gems, make ready the pall, make it quickly. We carry with us on coming outside our King and Lord. Long may he bide, beloved man, resting in the care of the ruler's embrace. Brave in warfight, Weohstan's son, commanded that men make announcement to bold heroes and building owners, bring much balewood to burn the good one, the leader of folk. The fire must devour, dark flames rising over ruler of warriors who often awaited the iron-hard showers when storms of flight swifts flung from their bowstrings, swift on their feathers which followed their barbs, were shot over shield walls as shafts did their work. Then the wise one, Weohstan's son, summoned from among those thanes some of the best of the king's men, counting them 7, and went with those warriors as one of 8 under woeful roof. One of them bore a lighted torch, leading the way. They cast not lots for looting the hoard. When they saw it sitting in the hall, the gold was there, unguarded, all of it, lying there, wasted. Little they mourned, as quickly working, they carried out the precious treasure. They pushed the dragon, the worm, over the wall. Let the waves take him. The surging water swallowed the gold miser. Then the untold treasure, the twisted gold, was loaded on a cart. The king was born, the hoary hero, to Hrothgar.
People of the Yeots, a pyre then built, tall on that headland, no trifling thing. Hung it with helms, hung their war shields and bright byrnies. Such boon he asked. Beloved leader was laid in the middle. Fighting men mourned their famous king. The warring ones woke on the mound the worthiest balefire. Wood smoke arose, black or roaring, blazing one's dance. Wound with weeping, the wind was still. Until the bone house was broken by fire, hot in the heart. With heavy souls, spear thanes all grieved the great one's death. Like the warriors, the woman of the Yeots, her hair bound up for Beowulf the king, sang in earnest and over again, crying in fear of foreign spears, times of slaughter, terror and war, harm and slave shame. Heaven took the smoke. The waiter folk fashioned for him a headland barrow, broad and towering, easily sighted by seagoers. In 10 days' time, their toil raised it. Beowulf's beacon on Balefire's ashes. A worthy wall, they worked around it, to be deemed mighty by men of wisdom. In barrow, they placed the bracelets and gems, ancient smith work, every last piece of gold that Beowulf brought from Rockden. They let the earth hold the hoard of treasures. Gold in the ground, going nowhere. Useless to men as ever before. Around that mound rode the veterans, all nobles born, a band of 12 who wished to mourn, weave for their king's saddest of songs, setting in words praise of kingship, pride in his courage, a song for their friend. So should it be that words will praise worthy friend Lord. Love the man's soul when sundered free. Life breath fleeing. Led from flesh home. So folk of the Yeots, fellows of the hearth, bewailed the loss of lord and prince. He was, they said, of all world kings, the mildest of men, the most peaceful, to Yeots most gentle, most yearning for praise.
Swa heat ye defabith, that mon his wiener drichten wordum heria, ferthum freya, thona he foth shulan of leech haman ladded weirthon. Swa beg nono dan yeta leilda chlafod scrura, heorth ye neeltax. Quaden that he were a world cunninga, mana mildust, on mont werust, leildum lithost, ond lof yernost.